Is
Yeah.
it easier when you're talking about installing a defense early to kind of teach it top down with a guy like Drew and some of those guys that maybe play rover to kind of teach them the back end first and then slide them down, or do you teach them both at the same time? How does that work?
Well, we started, top down teaching because we wanted to get Asmar on the field at the rover position. It felt like his skill set was such that he could manage, handling the position from a skill standpoint, because we're really lacking any kind of veteran leadership back there. And we didn't want to pull our most veteran player out of the secondary, the back end of our defense with Drew. So I think it was more about the hesitancy of losing a great communicator in the back end than it was more about the teaching. It's really not a heavy load of teaching for those guys. They're picking it up quite well. We really want to get a chance to see a lot of guys back there. We're working Nick Coleman back there, so we want to get a chance to see him, and that's allowing us to move Drew down so we can get a lot of safeties in there and see what they're capable of doing. So I think that's more of it, more so than the teaching per se. We want to see more guys back there.
You mentioned Nick Coleman, obviously, Alex White's making that position change.
Yep.
It's early yet, but what have you seen from those two guys?
I think the big thing will be, Nick's continuous development and tackling. You got to tackle back there. His ball skills are really good. I think we've seen that he's able to play the ball. He's got athleticism. We just want to continue to build on his tackling skills. I think if we go through this spring and say, well, he's tackling really well, I think we'll feel pretty good about the move.
Just kind of an overall philosophical question. You talked about kind of what you're trying to do with your football team. There's sort of two ways to generally speak ways to win. So there's kind of throw everything at it once and then build on it, and then there's kind of a slow build on the foundation. What's the approach you guys are kind of doing on those things?
Well, the systems of offense and defense and special teams are such that we're trying to teach in a manner that allows for a positive atmosphere. So, we're not trying to give them too much. We're really looking at technique based, and I think if you overload them at this point, with a defensive structure that's really 3 different structures in a matter of less than a calendar year, you may be setting yourself up for some frustration. So, we're playing 1 or 2 fronts right now. We're not playing a ton of coverages. We're really more interested in technique and execution. I think it's really more about creating a positive teaching environment and letting these kids play.
Do you have an update on Elijah's injury?
Did I give you an initial on it? I think.
I guess we saw it out there. So.
Yeah, he had a Lisfranc fracture. We had surgery. Brian Radigan did the surgery. So, typical Lisfranc fractures. We've had good success with their repairs. Got stepped on in practice, the second practice. We'll be able to train around the injury. Full range of motion, moving around, doing things in June, probably full clearance sometime in July. I think everything is from my perspective, there's, when you look at what we're doing in every phase, there's improvements, I think, across the board. I think every year you look at where you think you can get better in your practices. I think we need to tackle a little bit more. I thought we were a little soft in our practices. I thought that we needed to do a better job, in particular with our wideouts and receivers getting together. I think we needed to thud the back more instead of tagging off. It built a lot of bad habits. Our backs need to get hit a little bit. So I made sure that was part of our practice routine that had been missing. And then I think that we had missed some opportunities in these morning practices to really get all of our team time in because we ran up against the clock. In other words, we had to get them out of here. So I've installed our 11-on-11 periods, our team periods, earlier in practice to make sure that we get all those reps in, and consequently moved our 7-on-7 periods later, and those are the ones that we won't get to. So we won't be able to throw the ball very well, but we'll run it really well. So I hope everybody's happy about that.
Some of these changes, is that anything that any of your assistants brought to your attention, or was that all you saying that you?
No, they're not. I mean, they're not much involved in the practice schedule. That's more about my observations and what I think our team needs relative to the practice. But we discuss each practice and what they feel like they need from their group, and we'll make some adjustments as we get going. So after this weekend, when we get 3 practices in with pads, I'll discuss with them their needs. Like, do we need a little bit more work with the O-line, D-line on pass rush, or things of that nature? But the blueprint is for me, and then I'll ask each position group if there's some specific things that they are in need of.
What has Brandon shown you? I know this is just the first practice and stuff, but I know thinking you and George would feel over spring break, what kind of conversation you guys had after you did that?
I have no problem with him working out with George Whitfield. George really doesn't work on the specifics to the offense. George is really working on, the quarterback and throwing the football and moving in the pocket. So George is really good at just keeping those quarterbacks active and moving. But when it comes to the playbook, when it comes to his teammates, when it comes to his coaches here, Brandon understands that, where the rubber hits the road, those are the guys that matter the most. And, he knows when it's time, for Notre Dame football, where the focus is. When there's, off time and he needs, to stay sharp, to work with another coach is certainly acceptable. And he works with his high school coach as well, in training. As I said to him, as long as at the end of the day, when it gets into the playbook and your teammates and your position coach here, that there's not, any confusion there, which there isn't. I have no problem with those kinds of interactions.
Have your former quarterbacks done that as well, working with other coaches?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yep.
Brian, just on a follow-up on that, I mean, when they come back, obviously you haven't spent a lot more time during his year off with George.
Yeah.
But when they come back from these short bursts with George, I mean, do you see the noticeable difference with them? Do you say, wow, I'm glad that they did that?
No, not really. I think in those situations they're just, I think it's a bullpen session. I think they're keeping their arm loose, they're keeping their feet loose. He's just keeping them active and, good throwing sessions. And I think, when it's a longer period, like when Everett was there, they were watching film because they had the whole time. But, in those short bursts, they're just, really just staying in the moment and throwing the football.
And with Brandon, I know it's early in the process, Brandon and Ian and your other quarterbacks, just because of your numbers, have you thought about how much you want him to be a runner in your offense?
Yeah. He'll be a runner in the offense. Yeah. Do we want him to carry the ball 20 times? No. I think what he'll be is, I don't think you'll have a situation where we're calling quarterback power, or singular runs. He's going to have options, hand it off, throw the ball out on the perimeter. I think you'll see more of that than you will, prescribed quarterback runs. We had a little bit more of that last year with Kaiser. But I think you'll see that he has an option to get the ball out of his hands, more so than just prescribed runs.
And with the offense, you said you handed it over to Chip. Is it still the Brian Kelly offense? Are these guys learning a new scheme, or are they just learning tweaks to your scheme?
The culture is the offense that we run here because we're going to win next year, and Chip's going to be the greatest offensive coordinator in the country, and he's going to get a head job, right? And then I'm not going to introduce the Chip Long offense to the next offensive coordinator. So it has to have my, culture in it. But if he wants to change, Ringo Lucky protection to Ram and Lion protection, go right ahead. If he wants to change certain, calls, for example, 52-53 protection is now, Rita Lee, I'm okay with that. But the culture of the offense is still the base offense that I have always run, because I've got to be able to carry that with me from year to year. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
With wide receivers, then, can you, like maybe we saw a little bit today, can you play two big receivers at the same time?
Oh, yeah.
Play-
We can play 4 of those tight ends as receivers. We think there's great versatility. We think, Durham Smythe has really made great strides. I think he's been very impressive. I think Alizé and Nick Wisher and Brock Wright and all of those guys, I think can all be on the field, and you can detach them, and you can't say I'm not going to cover them. And they have the ability to impact what we're doing.
And then on the defensive side, you drop Nick Watkins back into that group of really talented young corners. How's he surviving that competition? What did you
No, I love Nick. His very coachable, wants to learn. He's pretty long. What I think Mike does really well, and this is what I liked about my interactions with him, is that we all have strengths and weaknesses, and so he has a great eye of saying, let's take Nick's strengths and let's put him in a position that we can really utilize his strengths, and put him in a position, maybe we're not a right and left corner team, maybe we're a short field, wide field team, and let's apply him in that fashion. And Nick's long, he's a little bit of a physical player, and let's go to those strengths. And I think he's shown some of those attributes early on.
Brian, as you're looking for compete level guys, maybe more on the depth charts, are there younger players who maybe you didn't watch a whole lot last year where you see their compete level noticeably rise?
Well, we've been observing it, Pete, since the start of our off-season workouts, because we're in so many. We're competing every single day in something. So we've seen some really impressive compete levels in some of our young players. Aaron Brooks. The offensive lineman is, and Hainsey. Those two guys. Does that mean they'll start? No, but competitiveness. We threw those two kids in today in 11-on-11, and they battled their butts off. I'm not sure they knew exactly what they were doing, but their compete level is so high. Brock Wright, his compete level is so high. C.J. Holmes, they're so high. Robertson, that whole freshman class that came in at mid-year, their compete level is so high, and we saw it when the winter workouts started that we threw them in a very competitive situation, and it was apparent that they were going to be able to compete. I'd say some of the guys that didn't play a lot in terms of have shown a higher level. Liam Eichenberger stands out as a guy that has a very, very high level. and it has been impressive, you know, from that standpoint.
With Elijah Taylor out, who do you really need to see fill that gap? He was a rotation player that flashed a little bit at USC.
Yeah.
Who needs to sort of fill that?
Well, you know, Micah Duke Treadway's had a really good offseason for us. He's changed his body, has been doing a really, really good job in all facets, in the classroom, in the weight room, and he's somebody that had been ascending anyway, you know, prior to the injury. You know, Brandon Tiesum's going to have to, you know, continue to get better, and he has been. You know, so I think those two guys in particular will continue to get some more work. But I think Micah is you know, shown some real promise here over the past couple of months.
I'm not sure, saw Josh Barajas out there.
Yeah, he was ill. Yeah.
Coach, how was it to be back out in pads again with the guys?
Well, what I liked about it, you know, more than anything else is the, you know, our guys, you know, more than anything else, there wasn't a big drop off today. Usually you go 2 days and then you take a week off and then you come back and you put your pads. It took us only a couple of periods to get back up to form, and that was nice to see. And then we forced kind of the action early with some contact, and I think that was the right move because it got everybody in the right frame of mind as to the way that we wanted practice to kind of roll from there. And you know, again, first day, but the teaching is good, the environment is good. There's a great, I think, response from our players in wanting to learn.
Were the guys excited to be out in pads again and hitting each other for the first time?
I don't think there's one guy out there that wasn't excited about being out there. You know, the body language was great. You know, everybody to a man has been looking forward to this day. You know, it was a pretty difficult off season for them. You know, they're looking forward to putting the pads on and getting out there, and I think they exhibited that today. I wouldn't say that. I think there's a very competitive situation with Kramer and Liam Eichenberger at that tackle position. Yeah, I think we would prefer to get him in at the guard position, but we know he can play the position. Those two freshmen are the guys that we have mapped out the right tackle position for, and they're gonna battle. Today Kramer was there. First two practice, Eichenberger got a lot of the work. Eichenberger will go back there tomorrow on Friday, and they're going to keep battling and splitting the action out there.
Are they also your next option at left tackle?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, it's reasonable to assume that there's Hunter Bivens going to be involved in this as well. We've just asked Hunter to take a seat right now, and he's done that for the team. We think Hunter is going to be a Mark Harrell for us. You know, a guy that's extremely valuable, that can play a number of positions. We trust him, but we want to see these two young players. Hunter is a guy that can play right or left tackle for us, and he's going to be a valuable player for us, to be a swing guy for us. So he's in the mix as well.
He is so effective on special teams last year, Chase Claypool.
Yeah.
Especially as a tackle. Is there any point that you debate about whether you came top off if they moved to defense, or is that pretty crystal clear that it's
No, we feel like we need his play on offense, and he'll continue to contribute on the special teams end of things, but we need his play on offense.
With, sorry,
Yeah, last one.
with Friday tomorrow, what
That's a good question. I've had a number of conversations with GMs and coaches about Deshaun, and my personal feeling is that he has the biggest upside of all the quarterbacks. I don't know that he's prepared to come in and win a Super Bowl for you. Some may feel as though maybe one of the other quarterbacks are. I don't know that firsthand. But I think in time he has the biggest upside of all the three quarterbacks. So, yeah, I also get it. It's the NFL, you know, and everybody's under the same pressure of performing and needing somebody to come in right away. But I think he's a guy that just needs some time. So if he gets in the right situation, I think he'd be the guy to take.